I keep getting calls from buyers asking me the same question. Kyle, is it worth walking away from my pre-sale deposit? And honestly, it's one of the most dangerous assumptions I hear right now. Because in British Columbia, walking away from a pre-sale doesn't just mean losing your deposit. It can mean being sued for hundreds of thousands of dollars, covering legal fees, and facing years of financial fallout. A lot of people think, well, the worst that happens is I lose my deposit, and that is incorrect. Developers here have the legal right to come after you for much more, and they're starting to use that right aggressively. Just a few days ago, I got off the phone with a YouTube client of mine who bought a pre-sale condo back in 2021. They put down just over $80,000 and assumed that if they could not close, they would just lose the deposit. When I informed them that a potential lawsuit could come down the pipe as well as thousands of dollars in legal expenses, they were very discouraged and did not know what they could do, because this could be hundreds of thousands of dollars of risk that they have just entertained before they even got the keys. And that is why it's so important to have a realtor who actually understands pre-sale contracts. When you sign one of these, you're entering a legally binding agreement that's far more complex than what most people realize. You need someone who can walk you through your liabilities, your assignment rights, and what happens if the market shifts, because right now it is shifting fast. And here's the truth most buyers don't want to hear. Developers can and will pursue damages beyond your deposit if you default. If the market value drops or if the building takes longer to sell out, you're the one who absorbs that loss, not them. And they have every legal right to come after you to recover it. Let's break down how we got here. So between 2017 and 2021, buying a pre-sale in Vancouver felt like a guaranteed home run. You'd line up in a sales center, put down your deposit, and by the time the building completed, you've made a six-figure gain. Interest rates were at record lows, money was cheap, and people weren't buying homes, they were buying appreciation. Developers knew it, and projects were flying off the shelves before a single shovel hit the ground. But then everything changed. Between March 2022 and July 2023, the Bank of Canada raised rates 10 times, and what that did was completely flip the math for anyone waiting to close. Suddenly, the 5-year fixed rate went from under 2% to well over 5%. That means a buyer who qualified for a $700,000 mortgage in 2021 might only qualify for $550,000 today, if that. Now layer on the market shift. Condo prices across Metro Vancouver have dropped between 5 and 10% since the 2021 peak. So imagine this, you bought a pre-sale for $760,000, you put down 20%. That's $152,000. But now similar units are trading at $690,000. If you can't close, you lose your deposit. If the developer resells it for less, they can sue you for the difference, another $70,000 or more, and that's before legal fees. And here's the kicker, the law doesn't care if your income changed, your mortgage renewal killed your ratios, or your appraisal came in low. In the eyes of the contract, you are still responsible. I've seen this play out again and again. Families downsizing into a smaller condo who suddenly couldn't qualify. First-time home buyers whose pre-approvals expired and now can't bridge that gap. Even investors who assured they could just assign the contract and walk away clean. And that's another major misconception, that assignment is a safety net. In theory, assignment sounds simple. Find someone else to take over your contract, but in practice, it's one of the hardest things to pull off in a declining market. Many developers don't allow assignments whatsoever, and until a building is substantially sold out. Others charge massive assignment fees, sometimes 5 or 10% of the purchase price, or they'll take a cut of your profit. And if prices have dropped, there might not even be a profit to share. Even if the developer allows the assignment, the market still has to want your unit. And right now, when buyers have their pick of new inventory with incentives, upgrades, and flexible deposits, they're not paying a premium to take over someone else's contract. So if you're counting on assignment as your exit strategy, be very, very careful. You might discover there is no exit whatsoever. And let's talk about appraisals for a second as well, because this is where a lot of deals fall apart. When a building finally completes, your lender sends in an appraiser to verify what the unit is worth today. If that appraisal comes in below your contract price, say you paid $850,000, but it appraises at $750,000, your lender will only finance up to that new value. You're responsible for covering the shortfall out of pocket. For most buyers, that is completely impossible, and once you can't complete, that's when the legal dominoes start falling. One of the hardest conversations I've had this year was with a client who bought 2 pre-sales during the pandemic. They figured they'd flip one, live in the other, but when both completed this summer, they were underwater. One of the hardest scenarios I went through was earlier this year selling a condo in downtown Vancouver for a client of mine who needed the proceeds to be able to complete on another pre-sale project. The issue was so many others were in the exact same position in that particular building. In that area of downtown, the average property was selling about 94% of assessed value, and because there were so many fire sales in this building, the property itself was selling about 20% under market. And a lot of these condos were on market for about 2 to 4 years before they actually sold. And the issue is, on that particular property, the seller minus realtor fees and what they bought the unit for plus GST almost took a $500,000 loss. From there, they needed to take those proceeds to try to put a down payment together for an upcoming project or risk losing a deposit that was well over 6 figures plus potential lawsuits. So it's very important, if you are starting to leverage properties, to understand what the consequences could be if one of these dominoes starts to fall. So what can you do if you're already in a pre-sale and you're worried you can't complete? First, do not hide from it. Get ahead of the problem early. Talk to your lender, talk to your realtor, and more importantly, you need to get a legal evaluation. You need to know exactly what the unit would sell for today versus your contract price. If there's a gap, you might be able to negotiate with the developer before default. Once it hits legal proceedings, your options shrink fast. And I know I do get a lot of phone calls from you asking for legal advice, but if you think you can't complete, you need to get a lawyer on your side to read the contract, to help with your options, because it's not something that you want to mess around with, and time is not your friend. Second, read your assignment clause carefully. If assignment is allowed, understand the fees and restrictions. If it's not allowed, you need to plan for the worst case scenario. Sometimes the smartest play is minimizing losses early rather than waiting for them to grow. Third, don't assume your financing is guaranteed either. Pre-approvals do expire, policies change, and appraisals fluctuate. Even if you were approved last year, you may not be approved today. Have your lender rerun the numbers and confirm you can still close under the current conditions. And finally, get that legal review that I referenced. A 1-hour consult with the real estate lawyer might cost a few $100s, but it could save you 6 figures in damages and years of stress. Most people skip this step because they assume their agent or the developer's representative will handle everything, but that is not their job. You need independent legal advice before you sign or before you decide to walk away. And I want to be clear, this isn't just about investors getting caught in a bad situation. I'm talking about regular buyers, people who genuinely plan to live in these homes, and the emotional toll is heavy. There are young families who save for years and years thinking they were securing their future, only to discover that the numbers no longer work. That's not speculation, that is just complete heartbreak. But here is the good news. Knowledge is leverage. When you understand your exposure, your financing, and your legal rights, you can make smarter moves and avoid becoming one of these horror stories. Because once you're served with a claim, it's not about emotion anymore. It is just strictly math. So if you're currently in a pre-sale, use this time wisely. Check your contract, run your numbers, ask your lawyer what your actual risk looks like if you can't close. And if you're thinking about buying a pre-sale right now, slow down. Don't get caught up in the marketing or the glossy showrooms. Look at the fundamentals, the price per foot, the developer's track record, and your own financial runway. You don't want to be in a position where walking away or completing both feel like losing options. And that's exactly what's happening to a lot of people today. The bottom line is this: your deposit isn't your ceiling of risk, it's the starting point. If the market shifts, you could be on the hook for so much more. So protect yourself before you ever sign. Get advice, get clarity, and remember, no pre-sale is worth betting your financial future on blind. If you found this helpful, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more real estate breakdowns like this one. And if you have any real estate questions, no matter what they may be, feel free to scan that QR code to book a call with me. My link is also in the description below to help with your real estate goals for the remainder of the year and into 2026. Until the next one, thank you so much for your time.